The present moment, if you think about it, is the only time there is. No matter what time it is always now. Marianne Williamson. Welcome everybody to the Story Cafe. My name is Adriana and I'm the host of Story Cafe. The podcast is all about life, really. People often ask me when I say something about having a podcast, they're like, what is it about? And usually I just stumble around some words and then say life. It's kind of just about life. So I share my experiences, some of the things I'm going through, the lessons I'm learning. And I do that on here, and hopefully some folks find that resonates with them or interesting to them. So that's what Story Cafe is all about. Today's episode is actually the first time I've recorded at home in about 3 months. So I'm super excited for that. I'm sitting in my pajamas, which is always lovely. And there might be some little voices that you hear because I am at home and my kids are here, but I love the coziness of doing this at home. I always feel more comfortable at home. So I'm excited to be back in my little office. Today's episode is all about being in the present and being in the moment right now. I want to start off this episode by doing a little shout out to Sandra D, who in many ways was the inspiration for this episode. Oftentimes, Sandra will be one of the people that says, don't get too focused on what's coming. Just be in the moment, live in the moment. And so she, in many ways, was an inspiration for this podcast. And she's just a tremendous human being. And I have been very lucky. Anyone who knows her is lucky to have her in their life. So this episode is dedicated to Sandra D. I wanted to do this episode, my last episode was about grief and loss. And I think a lot of times when you lose somebody, you think about life differently, right? You start to think about more living in the moment and appreciating the time you have. And so this, topic seemed to fit really well with what I was thinking about. Full transparency, this is the third time I've recorded this episode. The first time I recorded it, I wasn't super happy with, I just felt like I was going in circles a little bit with what I wanted to say. And so I stopped and I started again. The second time I was actually really happy with it. But the universe decided that it was going to teach me a lesson in being in the moment. And I accidentally deleted it. And so I sat for a few minutes after spending quite a bit of time talking about how important it is to not dwell on the past. And I sat there thinking about what a dummy I was to accidentally delete that. And I'm like, well, I guess this is your life lesson for the day. You're going to have to record it again. And this is what happens sometimes. Things happen. And I can dwell on the past or I can get to re-recording. So here I am. Take 3, as they say. So, being in the moment. What am I going to talk about? Well, I want to kind of break this podcast into 3 things. One is this idea that thinking about the past and thinking about the future can be really positive. But also overthinking about the past and overthinking about the future can have a negative impact on us. And the other one, which is kind of tethered to all of it, is this idea that we sometimes wish away the moment we are in and why maybe that isn't always a great idea. So that's kind of the 3, they're kind of the 3 general things I wanted to talk about. And when I first started writing this, I thought to myself, well, being in the moment, that's easy, that's simple. Can I even do a podcast about that? It goes without saying, just be in the moment, live in the moment. But as I dug into it a little bit, I realized it's something that I actually find really challenging. And it's something I've found really challenging for a long time. And so when I think about the positive aspects of forward looking or backwards looking, for me, if you are looking to something in your past, whether it's 2 minutes ago or 2 years ago or 20 years ago, and you're looking back as a way of learning so that in the moment you can do better or be better or learn something from that situation, I think that's a really positive way of using our past experiences. Similarly, I think if you are looking to the future and you're visioning and dreaming and just being imaginative or creative about what you want your future to look like as a way of, providing a guidepost for you right now, something to work towards right now, I think that's really positive. I think when we use the past and the future to help us in the moment, then it has a lot of value. What I think becomes really challenging is when the past and the future start to actually take away from our moment right now. They start to take away from our experiences in the moment. That's what I think warrants the most examination, right? This idea that we can lose time when we get stuck in the past or over-focused on the future. So let's start with the past. We'll go backwards first. I have spent so much time either planning, imagining what I would say or what I would do if I was ever in a situation again, or going in circles about a conflict I've had in the past that, I think about the amount of writing I could do, the amount of reading I could have done with that time, the time with friends I could have spent. It's like you think about a time in your life when you've had a conflict with someone and how you come home and you just go in circles about it. And you think about what you might have said or what you wish you had said or how angry you are about something that they have said or how sad or hurt or whatever the feelings are associated with it. We lose a lot of time to that. And the reality is there's nothing that we can do to change the past. The past is the past. It's set in stone. We can change maybe how we interpret it. We can change how we respond to it, but it is what it is. And so when I think about the sleepless nights I've had thinking about a conflict with someone, or just wishing that I had had the perfect comeback in a moment, you lay there and think, well, I wish I had said this or I wish I had said that. I can't. And I can't recreate that situation and do it all over again. And for me, looking back now, that is not a good use of my time. 8 minutes and 24 seconds ago, I had to start recording for the third time. I could, if I had let myself, spent that whole 10 minutes stomping around my house being angry that I had stupidly deleted the track I had worked on so hard. And so I didn't. I decided to just let it go and move on. And that's one of the things I'm trying to practice in my own life, is not overthinking things that have happened in the past. If there's something I can learn from it, I want to learn from it so I can grow. But if there's not, I got to just let it go. I mean, I've had moments this summer where I've been hanging out with friends, and sometimes I overthink the jokes I've made or things I've said, and I worry that I've accidentally hurt someone's feelings. And this summer, one of the things I've been trying to do is allow myself a very brief amount of time to think through the situation, and then I gotta let it go. I can't change it. If someone tells me that I did something wrong, then I'll fix it then, but probably I'm overthinking it. That's been a practice I've been doing for the last couple months as a way of not getting over-focused on thinking about things that have already happened and not feeling guilty about something I may or may not have done. Because we lose time in those spaces, and time is finite. We don't know how much time we'll have, but we know that eventually it runs out. One of the things I've been working on is not getting over-focused on the past. The other problem with over-focusing on the past is that you can inadvertently cause yourself to be angry, frustrated, sad, hurt all the time, right? If you are if you're going to a counselor or a therapist to talk through and process things that have happened in your life so that you can kind of move on from them, that's awesome. If you are sitting in that anguish or frustration and not processing, you're just spinning on it, then you're becoming consumed with those negative emotions. And that really has a negative impact on your life, right? It impacts how you experience your relationships. It impacts how you walk through the world, how you are in the grocery store, right? And so that's why I think it's important to, yes, process if it's going to help you with how you are today, but also let things go and move through them. The other thing, kind of the flip side of that, which is in some ways a mirror image, is we overthink about the future and we overplan and we get really anxious about being ready for anything. Maybe not everyone. There's probably a lot of people that don't do that. I am someone who does do that. So I like to plan for all scenarios. And sometimes that comes from a place of safety. So I like to be in situations where I'm safe, my kids are safe, the young people I work with are safe. So I always say safety first and fun will follow. And some of that is really helpful because it helps, being safe in the present moment. But sometimes it's just kind of ridiculous. I remember many years ago, I lived in Chester, in like rural Chester, where there were lots of like nature and creatures and stuff. And I would lay in bed and I would lose sleep over this. I would lose sleep thinking about what I was going to do if a bear came into the house. So a bear shows up at the door, manages to open the door, and then comes into the house. And then I happen to be there, and what am I going to do? Now, on one hand, it's kind of a silly example, but I could think of countless other times when I've done the same thing, whether it's about an interaction I know I'm going to have with someone I struggle with on a personal level, or whether it's trying to get ready for something and plan for all the different possibilities. I'm switching jobs, switching to a new school, and I could have chosen to think through, and this is what I would have done in the past, think through all the possible ways that first day could go. And what I've realized recently is there isn't a lot of value in doing that. And here's why. So in the case of the bear, if a bear were to come into the house, I actually don't know how I would react. And the bear could do a lot of different things. The bear could then turn around and leave and I wouldn't have to do anything. Or the bear could stay and I might need to close my door. There's so many different things that could happen. You can't actually plan for all of those. And so you waste time thinking about it, but you're going to react the way you're going to react, whether you've planned for it or not. Now, that's not always true. Obviously, in high stress situations, you think about, first responders, like they plan and practice these things so they have an auto response to it. But in a normal everyday situation, you actually can't just plan for every possible thing that might happen in the world, because then you would never live, right? In the case of my job, I could have spent a lot of time thinking about how the first day would go. But I need to just trust that in that situation, I know how to behave. I know how to behave like a professional. I know that when I walk into a room or into a building, I'm going to know how to have a conversation with someone. I don't need to plan the conversation because I know how to talk to people. And so, yes, there are times when planning and practicing for things is valuable, but not in the kind of everyday situation. And so that's one thing I did try this summer, is I tried not doing that, not planning. And every time my mind wanted to wander to that place, I made myself stop and say, no, we're just going to be in the moment. You're going to be, you still have time left in summer. You don't need to plan for that first day. And it was really, really hard. It turns out that when I go into a place and I come in contact with other people, I do in fact know how to communicate, even though I haven't planned it through in my head. So, all that to say, there's a certain amount of trust we need to have in ourselves and our own ability to handle situations. And if we can build that trust in ourselves and build our awareness of when we start to go down that road of like overthinking the future, we can pull ourselves back from it and not lose or give up time to that situation. It's hard to think about because I do think for a lot of people, planning for the future, and I'm one of these people, planning for all different situations, it's a protection mechanism. It's a thing we do to protect ourselves so we can feel more ready. But I think more healthy for me, and I'm not going to say that this is for everyone, but for me, a healthier choice is to build trust in myself. Because the world is not out to get me, despite the fact that I've had moments in my life where it has felt that way. The world is not out to get me. The world is just hard. And hard things happen to people, to all people. Pain, sickness, all kinds of things happen, and they happen to all people. And so I am working to build that trust in myself because I think that's a healthier response than like overthinking it. And in the end, overthinking it I'm more anxious. I'm tired because I'm losing sleep. And in the end, it never goes how you think it's going to go anyway. So it feels a little like a silly practice. And so that's one of the things I'm trying to shift. In terms of like being in the moment, there's not ruminating and getting overstuck on the past, not overthinking and overplanning for the future, and trusting in your ability to be in the world and deal with situations. And then the other kind of thing that tethers into all of this, which has come up for me, is the way in which I sometimes, and I think many people do, wish away time. And I think this starts at a really young age, and I think it's healthy to a point. You think back to like kids or the kids you have in your life, whether it's nieces or nephews, or you think back to your own childhood, you jump from exciting thing to exciting thing, right? So you jump from you're excited about Christmas, and then you're thinking about Easter, and maybe it's birthdays or summer break or school, Halloween. I mean, all the things that are like big and exciting as kids, we kind of are constantly wishing for the next thing. But when I think about my funnest moments as a kid, they're often the moments when I'm just riding my bike, not thinking about that. The first time I ever rode my bike to the gas station to buy kablooies, or, the sleepover where something really silly happened. Being in the moment, those are the times I think where we find our most, I don't want to say find most of our joy, but I think we find a lot of happiness when we are in the moment, or we find a lot of, really deep connection with other people when we are in the moment. The most beautiful conversations I've had with friends happen in the moment. They're never planned and they're never at designated times. They just happen and they're really special. I think we do it a lot when we're teenagers too. I can remember being 12 and I couldn't wait till I was a teenager. Once I was 13, I couldn't wait to be 16. Then I couldn't wait to be 18 so I could vote. Then I was really excited about being 19 because I really wanted to go to the bar because based on all the movies I'd watched, that was going to be really fun. The list kind of goes on and on. There are milestones in our life, and sometimes because we're so excited for the milestones, we can get sucked into wishing away time. So much of our life actually happens in those middle places that we have to push ourselves to just be in the moment and appreciate it when it happens. And that's a really important lesson, but it's a really, really hard lesson, especially when you're in hard moments. When I had my kids, one of the things I told myself I was going to do, and I worked really hard at, was not wishing away time. Because I knew it would go quickly. I didn't want to wish it away. And so I tried really hard in moments when I was exhausted, moments when I thought this child is never going to sleep, or they're never going to stop crying, or they're never going to get better, like moments when I was terrified about fevers and all the things. I tried really hard to just be present, because also in those moments, really beautiful things happen. And they feel more special because you are in the hard times. My kids don't climb up on my lap anymore and snuggle with me. And so I do miss that time. But I also really just appreciate the moments we have right now. Like, the moments are different now and they're really special. And so I'm trying not to wish that away. I know there's so much on the internet about teenagers and not like just surviving adolescence with a teenager in your house. And it's hard not to get sucked into that, but I'm trying really hard to just be like, I'm just going to appreciate having a teenager in the house and all that entails. And I actually said to my son a couple times now, because sometimes I quite intentionally behave like a weirdo. And I said to him, there's 2 ways we're going to move through adolescence, either angry at each other, or I'm going to be as weird as possible. So at minimum, I'm going to have a lot of fun, and then we'll get through it. And so I think like this, like an active choice to be in the moment and appreciate where we are is helpful. Because otherwise you if you're wishing it away, it feels like it goes faster and you miss the good stuff in the middle, right? You miss the moments that are so special if you're wishing away time. One of the reasons I think all these aspects of being in the moment are really challenging is because a lot of it is about letting go of control, right? When we overplan for the future, it's because we're trying to maintain some control. When we're wishing away a bad situation, it's usually because we're not in control in that bad situation. If you have an illness or a sickness, that feels very out of control and you just want it to be over. And so it's hard not to allow that desire to be in control consume us. But there is something very freeing when we do let go of that control. I want to end with a story about my wedding. And it's kind of a silly story, and it certainly doesn't speak to like hardship or pain. I do think it speaks to the value that being in the moment gives you and the choices we have on how we perceive situations. Maybe I actually have 2 stories. I'll tell you about my wedding, and then I'll end with my grocery store story. When I got married about a week before my wedding, my brother said to me, "So what about that hurricane?" And we got married at my husband's cottage, well, his parents' cottage, and we rented a yurt, which is like a round, beautiful canvas tent. So that we had that, but we knew it probably wouldn't be enough space to eat a meal in it. So we also rented a tent. We would have the ceremony in the yurt. Everyone would be there. Then we would bring tables in and set them up in the yurt and in the tent. We would eat our meals, and then people would migrate back to the yurt for speeches and dessert. Now, when my brother told me about this hurricane, I was kind of like, well, there's nothing I could do about it. I'm not even going to pay attention to it right now. A few days later, someone said to me, and I don't remember who it was, but someone said to me, the things you're going to remember the most about your wedding are the things you didn't plan for. And it sort of made sense, but it didn't really 100% make sense until the wedding actually happened. So the hurricane got downgraded to a tropical storm, but there was a mountain of rain. It poured. Like, it was the calm before the storm happened during the ceremony. There was a light drizzle right after the ceremony when we had our pictures taken. And then shortly after that, it just rained, and it rained, and it rained. So with the rain came cold, came damp. And we quickly realized that, like, if we had people sit in the tent to eat their meals, they would be cold and uncomfortable. And so we needed to pivot. we decided we could probably haul enough tables in there if we all squished in together that we could all eat in the yurt. And because of the structure design, the yurt was warmer because there wasn't the same kind of wind coming through. And so in that moment, the ceremony was over. Someone had asked me how they could help, and I turned around and I said, you know what? If I can get everyone's attention, we're going to need them help. What we're going to do is we're going to take all the tables in the yurt, and if anyone who is able to help move tables, that would be awesome. They did. It was amazing. I can actually remember my Uncle Alec, who just passed away a couple weeks ago. I remember him. I could just picture the smile on his face and just eager to help. And everyone was eager to help. That's what was so wonderful about it. Here we had asked these guests that had shown up to a wedding to start moving tables and moving chairs. It's pouring down rain outside. And everyone did. And it was so special. And it was one of the highlights of my wedding, is just to see people come together. Because people do come together. People do show up. Right? People help when they are asked or when they are needed. And there's something really, really wonderful about that. Everyone came in. We had this meal together. We had speeches. And then eventually, because of the rain, a lot of people had to leave. But around 11 o'clock, there was still music and dancing going on. And anyone that was staying at the cottage was still there. But the water, there was so much water that the ground couldn't soak it up anymore. And it started to come up through the floor of the yurt, which was like this kind of natural fabric thing. Most of us took our shoes off and were basically dancing around in our formal wear in puddles in the yurt. And it was hilarious and it was fun. And I wouldn't have it any other way. And so I couldn't plan for that. And I could have chosen to get really upset about that not going the way I wanted to go. But in the end, those were the moments that made it really special. And I think that's why it's so important to be in the moment, because the unexpected happens, and that's pretty amazing. If you think about, I said earlier I would share my grocery store story. I have this destiny of always ending up in a line at the grocery store that's going to take the longest, no matter what. And for a long time, this bothered me, and then I decided to just accept it. But ultimately what happens is I will pick a line, and then it could be the shortest line. But no matter what, if I pick it, something will happen in front of me that will slow everything down. Someone will have 7,000 coupons. Someone will have forgotten something, or they need a price check. Sometimes I'm the one that causes the problem. And a long time ago, I decided I'm just going to accept it. So no matter whatever line I pick, I almost never jump lines. So you know how sometimes you can see, oh, that line's going faster, I'll jump over there. I never do it, because if I do it, that line will slow down. It happens all the time. So I just stay in my line, and I just accept it. And I can choose in that moment to be frustrated, or I can choose to just relax. Consider it a vacation, a grocery line vacation. And what's really wonderful about it is when I allow myself to just relax and just wait as long as it takes, I get to see some really special moments in the grocery store. I get to see moments where you can see a parent with a kid is really struggling, to keep this kid entertained as the lines move forward. And then you'll see someone else in line start to chat with the kid, or maybe the kid will drop something and they'll pass it to them. Or you'll see someone help someone with their groceries. I mean, there's so many things that happen. And I notice them because I'm just allowing myself to be there. I'm not stewing in anger and frustration. I'm not hopping around trying to pick a different line to go faster. I am just being. And so, I mean, it's a silly way to end the podcast, because I do know that there are a lot of worse situations, and it's much harder to bear witness to pain. It is much harder to bear witness to suffering. But certainly in my own suffering, in my own life, even despite all those things, there are some really beautiful things that have happened in my life in those moments. And that's why I'm trying to do better at just being present, just being in the moment. Because I don't want to miss anything. And that's my invitation. My invitation to anyone who's listening is to notice when you're wishing away time. Notice when you're ruminating on things in the past that you can't change, or when you're overthinking the future. Notice that. And ask yourself, what if I didn't in this moment? What if I just let that thing go? Or what if I just appreciated the moment that I'm in? Because it's the moment that I'm in. What would happen? And for me, what has happened is I'm trusting myself a little bit more. I'm losing less sleep. And I'm spending more time with my family or with myself or doing things that are meaningful to me because I'm not wishing away time. I'm not wasting my time on things I can't change. And I'm not overthinking things to come that I cannot control. And so that's my invitation to you. Think a little bit about that. And think about what would happen if you did that differently. And you never know. Maybe something will, bubble to the surface for you that is helpful and meaningful as it has for me. So that's what I have for you today. That is the end of our podcast. I love chatting with you all, whoever is listening. 3rd time's a charm. I'm going to finish this up, hit save, because I'm really hoping to not do it a 4th time. Thank you all for listening. Have a wonderful time doing whatever it is that you're doing. Bye for now.